Motivation Mondays. Welcome to the Froggy Five. I'm your host, Jim Froehlich, founder and managing member of the Froggy Companies, where when it comes to real estate, you can't stop the hop. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to be interviewing myself for this first week of podcasts. And then starting next week, we're going to have guests lined up week after week, just providing tons of insight and valuable lessons about real estate investing and real estate development. For those of you who don't know Jim, he is a full-time real estate investor, real estate developer, and fund manager. He's syndicated over $40 million in the last 4 years, and he's a technical consultant for different investment and development firms. Prior to that, Jim spent 25 years as a technical consultant and program manager for a number of different agencies and branches of the military and government. And before that, he was an Air Force officer. Good afternoon, Jim.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Look forward to digging in here on a few lessons and insight into your real estate journey.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
To begin with, I want to ask you, how did you get into real estate?
Okay, well, I guess I really got started back in the 90s. I'd say I was more a fan and a student of real estate for many years, starting in the mid-90s. I would watch some infomercials, and one that particularly caught my attention was Carlton Sheets. Some of you older people remember Carlton Sheets. He was the no money down man. And I bought into... luckily, my wife also agreed. We bought into a big set of cassettes, started educating myself. The package came with cassettes and documentation on how to get into real estate investing with no money down, as the name implied, or little money down. And it was single family homes or 4 units or 6 units, small multifamilies, and creative ways of getting deals done by going through, back then, the want ads, in the newspaper, things for sale by owners especially, and going through phone calls with people and trying to see what their motivation was for selling, and then come up with creative techniques, mainly seeing if they would take some of their down payment back in the form of a note, which would be a secondary lien if you were to go ahead and get a mortgage on the property, or sometimes an assumable mortgage that they might have. So there were sheets for doing due diligence and contracts, and I really credit the Carlton Sheets program, even though it seemed kind of hokey at the time or infomercial-like. I really credit, I learned a lot from Carlton Sheets, and how to talk to people on the phone about deals, how to do due diligence on deals, how to structure deals. And we went into that, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we had some false starts, I would say, around 1999 with the first 6 unit, and sort of set that aside for 16 years, the real estate life. Around that same time in the 90s, Robert Kiyosaki came out with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which millions of people have read and have been inspired by, especially in real estate over the years. And that really put my goals relative to real estate in perspective at that time. I was a young Air Force officer, had a young family, but I had a vision in my head that someday I wouldn't be in the E quadrant as an employee, but I would work my way over to the I quadrant as an investor someday. And for those of you who know Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's really about learning how to get passive income by having assets that generate income. And he talks about his real estate journey in there. So there's a whole group of books around that. One of them's written by Ken McElroy, The ABCs of Real Estate Investing, and that sat on our shelf for years. We probably dusted it off around 2015. And at that time, I decided, hey, I'm really going to go do real estate someday. And really, I envision myself as being a writer up here in New Hampshire, and kind of always have. So that's sort of a little dream I have of writing a novel. I actually stopped working on a master's degree once to write a novel, and that manuscript sat in 300 and some pages for years. So setting that aside, I imagine that I want to create wealth with passive investments to be able to do other things in my life someday. So that was sort of a little bit of a motivator at that time. But from, I'll say, 2015 to 2019, at which time I decided to do it full-time, take my hobby of investing and go full-time in real estate. And what I was doing was I was driving several times a week, 5-hour round trips to work as a systems engineer. I had been successful for many years in that occupation. And I was just listening to hundreds of hours of podcasts and learning more about investing and reading books. I like the ABCs of real estate investing to start with. And I started reaching out to people and getting involved in deals first as a small co-GP on deals. And then later I ran into a guy who said, hey, find me any deal up to 60 million that's good and we'll fund it. And that really gave me extra motivation to really get involved in the game. And I really became attracted to the syndication side and trying to get there quicker because I was already in my mid-40s. And then by then I was 48 when I went over full-time into real estate and sort of burned the bridges behind me on what I was doing. And mostly in due diligence with new development and kind of haven't looked back. So that's kind of how I got into real estate.
Did you have to overcome anything in particular or persevere through anything on your real estate journey?
Oh, sure. Great question. So I would say my life from birth to age 23 was all about perseverance. But I won't bore you with my sad story except to say that I was entrepreneurial. And I would say from the time I was around 6 years old, I started finding ways to work all the time to get my own lunch money, to buy lunch instead of being given a free lunch at school, to get the different types of shoes or clothes that I wanted. Sometimes as I became a young teenager and we didn't have much, but I was just sort of always trying to earn money and look for ways to creatively to get money. And, I went on a journey that sort of culminated with me eventually graduating from Georgia Tech and being commissioned as a lieutenant in the Air Force at 23. My life has been fully blessed for the next 30 years. I have had leukemia for the last 20 years, but the last 5 I haven't been on medicine. So I've been blessed in all these ways. But perseverance specifically within the real estate realm, I'll just say that one of the biggest things I had to overcome was from already being a successful engineer. And, I'm just a solid middle-class guy who grew up in a blue-collar family and sort of that type of mentality, wanting to go over into real estate later in life in my mid-40s and not having a full nest egg buffer built up where I could take time to do that, created some challenges for me and a little bit of a fear factor of how do I make a lateral move. And so that would be, a challenge I had. I overcame that by packaging up all the skills that I developed over the years and experience and figuring out how I could apply that, how and where in the real estate world of development and investing. And then I met a guy who's really been my mentor, John Bogdasarian from Permanis, who sort of took a chance with me to really let me deep dive and work for him. And it's been great ever since.
Is there anything in particular that motivates you when dealing with real estate investing and development?
Sure, absolutely. I'm motivated. Like I said, I was always motivated originally to create passive income, right? I've been sort of an independent moving type of guy throughout my career. I was telecommuting back in the 90s before other people were doing it. I wanted to, like most people, live life on my own terms as soon as I could. I watched my father be more of a company man, work at a sugar mill for many years. He died broke. He owned more money than he came in the world with. And I decided from a young age that I was always going to be landing on my feet no matter what I did. So I'm always motivated by that, by that experience, that sort of hard struggle of childhood as well, if you will, that I was blessed with. And I want to be able to help my grown sons. I want to be able to help my grandchildren if they need it someday, and just have the flexibility and the freedom that comes with being an investor and being in the real estate world, because the real estate world is so big. It's like an ocean of ways to make money. And so I'm motivated by that. And then beyond that, I've got other sort of more idealistic motivations, and they come more get added on as I learn more and I figure out like how other people in different locations are living, and how important it is, I guess I would say, for people to have good living circumstances and how much good you can do. So I'm kind of hoping to do a lot more in the future. I got to get to that spot, I should say, of having enough money to do more to help society. But I'll say when I first decided I wanted to really do real estate full time, I had the idea for the Froggy REIT, the Real Estate Investment Trust, and that Froggy REIT was going to be to provide safer, cleaner, friendlier living for people. And a lot of that was based on my own childhood of having to, our neighborhood was a little rough. You were always running from dogs or bullies. And if you couldn't outrun them, then you had to fight them. And I think, and there's that can be helpful to a person in the long run, but children shouldn't necessarily be living in fear or these kind of situations when they're young. And I think there are a lot of people living in communities that deal with that. And so I imagine if we could get Class D multifamilies and turn them into Class C and make them more secure and cleaner and make sure that people are safe, or Class C and turn them into Class B. It was sort of a vision I had with the Froggy REIT. And I naively at that time thought I could just get, this is probably in 2010 I started thinking about this, that I could get thousands of people to invest. And that's when I come to understand securities laws and the SEC laws around that, realize I couldn't just go out and advertise and get 2,000 other military veterans to invest with me on a multifamily. That's becoming more accessible, but there was, the Reg A versus Reg D, there's a lot to learn and digest in there. So I'll say, yeah, all of that's a motivation. I'll package that up. That's a long answer to a short question. Hey, thanks for having me on. If anybody else wants to find out more about what we're doing, please come to froggycompanies.com. Check out our 3 different business areas. We also have the Froggy Fund 1 that's now open for up to $18 million. We're going to be investing that $18 million across a diverse number of assets, cash flowing and ground up. And I'm really excited about this fund and really confident that we can outperform most of the other people out there in terms of what we invest in and how we do our due diligence and the type of partners we put together. So it's great talking to you, and see you next time.